So, the Force Battle video hit 100,000 views, and it made a bunch of headcanoning fanboys and girls mad. Because of that, I thought we deserve a sequel. Hello, fellow megatennists. Today we're myth-busting yet again. Persona fans are cut from the same cloth as SMT fans. Headcanon is just a fact of life. If you don't know what a headcanon is, it's as simply as the creation of your own truth based on your feelings. The loosest interpretation of death of an author, which is a review technique where you purposely ignore who the artist is and what their intentions were in order to critique a work. You might be asking yourself, what is the Persona equivalent of fierce battle, one more god rejected? And I submit for the approval of the Midnight Society, the Persona car logo meme. The car meme is pretty simple. The school emblems in Persona are definitely based on car companies' logos. Saint Hermelin is Pirigat or Jaguar, depending on who you ask. The Seven Sisters is Subaru. Gecko-Con is BMW. Yasogami is Mercedes-Benz. And Shujin Academy is Citroen. I'm sorry, I don't know how to speak French. If you're American, two of those car companies might seem unfamiliar to you. Pirigat and Citrus. And that's because they're both European. Both are specifically French, and that's just a coincidence. It's just as coincidental as the meme assigning the correlation. Now let's get back to death of an author. We know the authors of Megaten love to reference pop culture, fashion, movies, music, etc., etc. And as a man who spent most of his adult life reading what these Japanese men had to say about their art and design, they have always been pretty vocal about their inspiration, the references, and why they're there. Here's just a sampling of examples I can think of off the top of my head. Persona's Velvet Room is based on the Black Lodge from Twin Peaks. The old woman and young boy from Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne Maniacs are a nod to the same show. The alcohol Kyoji drinks in Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner is real alcohol. All the real-world fashion worn by Kaneko demons and characters are based on those things. I'll show some on screen. The Spawn inspiration, which is also funny because Kaneko drew a Spawn variant for the Spawn movie release on Laserdisc in Japan. I will also put a link to the Kaneko Crib Notes, one of the most useful Tumblr blogs detailing other inspirations from Kaneko's art. Joker from Batman The Dark Knight Rises is in Shin Megami Tensei 4, for instance. Walter, Jonathan, and a lot of other characters in SMT4 are based on real people. So is half the cast of like Persona 1 and 2. Tons of real-world celebrities, and also Atlas staff are just in the game, or inspiration for characters. There's also two separate characters and two separate series that eat Pocky, and both of them eat of different quote-unquote Pocky. Tokyo Disneyland also exists in Megaten, but it's called Tokyo Destinyland. Pixie is also Tinkerbell in the Digital Devil Saga game, but only in Japanese. In English, I believe they call her Tinklebell, and she's also in Tokyo Disneyland. Cielo Mist exists, and you get the picture. You can feel free to name other instances of that kind of thing in the comments because there's a lot of them. And for those of you who didn't know that, you get the idea. Atlas does this all the time. One concern I've seen lobbied is maybe they don't mention the car logos because being inspirational might lead them to getting sued. Well, defer to the other examples I mentioned. The only counter argument that I see as valid is someone saying that Mickey and Donald were cut from SMT, maybe from out of fear of getting sued. But that's also because Disney is notoriously litigious. But again, Atlas still puts Tokyo Disneyland in their games. It's in Persona 5. And also, Atlas was smaller back then, so them getting sued back then would be a lot of a big deal for them, not for Disney. The other thing to consider is that parody is a pretty good defense. It's pretty successful, and since all the other mentioned could fall under such a legal defense, I think that is safe to say that it's not that big of a deal if they got, sued, because they could just argue parody. And with most of the examples and others I didn't mention, like the bondage angel literally being the Fifth Element design, or Pixie literally being ripped off from Cham from some obscure anime, all of that being said, let's actually look at each design, starting with Saint Hermelin. Saint Hermelin depicts an ermine. Hermelins, or ermines, are good luck. Hermelin just means ermine in German. They also kill snakes, which is pretty useful because St. Hermelin is a Catholic school, and that's also a good thing because Catholics generally don't like snakes since the Garden of Eden thing all happened, that old drama. That XP thing is also a very specific thing called a Cairo. It's one of the earliest Christographs. So it has the XP, which is Chi and Rho, but it also has the Alpha and Omega, meaning that it's the beginning and ending. So it's supposed to be Christ. That's what Christogram means. Christogram is just a fancy way of saying symbol that means Jesus Christ. Now, Pugiat uses a lion as its symbol. And while some designs of the Pugiat logo look similar in poses, that's because the inspiration for the Pugit logo and the Persona Hermelin logo is the same. Heraldry. If you're even slightly aware of European history, heraldry or crests are like the European equivalent of Japanese mon. They designate which rich and or powerful person you work for. Not too different from a coat of arms or family crest. Not to mention, an ermine doesn't really look like a lion. Not at all, unless you are looking at a lioness and have something in your eye and you've recently been declared legally blind, and also you have never seen a lion before, like those old stuffed lions that Europe used to make. And all of that's a moot point anyways because Pogit does not use a lioness in any of its logo iconography. As for a jaguar, the logo is some kind of unknowable creature. Further research is still needed to identify what the jaguar logo is supposed to represent. Oh, I also forgot to mention the leaves of the St. Hermelin logo. I don't know what they are. If you're a Catholicism symbols expert, let me know what they are. I also neglected to mention the Star of David in the emblem, but that's also a Judeo-Christian iconograph. I could also be wrong. Maybe it's not an ermine, and just a depiction of lions from antiquity when Europeans had no idea what they look like. Could be based on this lion, or maybe this crest. The Seven Sisters emblem depicts the Pleiades, which are also known as the Seven Sisters. This is the same thing the Subaru logo is based on. Both depict stars in their placement in the sky. I can't really argue that they aren't similar, but note how the stars are depicted. Subaru doesn't even represent the whole constellation. They got the knockoff Six Sisters. I guess also this means Subaru has the copyright of the sky, because apparently you can't represent constellations anymore. No telling how much money they made off the movie WALL-E. As for Gecko-Con, well, they just changed the blue to black and then pulled the old Missy Elliott. That's right, they flipped it and reversed it. But actually no! The Gecko-Con High emblem is compared to the BMW logo often, but according to Sejima, who was kind of surprised that people kept comparing it to the BMW logo, said that that was not the intention. It's because he wanted to incorporate the concept of persona, which is the front and back sides of humans, the light and shadow, into the design of the school emblem. Coincidence? I think not. For BMW, the meaning of it is, well, BMW blue for Bavaria, and the quadrants are the representation of a plane's propeller spinning. Psych! I lied about that last part. It's a popular myth. In actuality, it's just the state coat of arms, flipped because it was against the law to depict it. If BMW owns the copyright to checkered patterns, Vans is gonna go to business! No, wait! Someone warn Ska, people! Someone warn Ska! Yasogami High is one of the most intricate designs that is so difficult to explain. You see, the logo is just a stylized Y. If you look at the art book, as I'm showing on screen now, you can see that they tried this a couple of times. And that little symbol next to the Y, well, that means high in Japanese. So Y high, or Yasogami High. Whereas the Mercedes-Benz star, the 3-point star, it represents the company's drive for universal motorization. But each point also has its individual meaning. The points represent land, sea, and air. Environments, the company believe that one day that they will dominate with Mercedes-Benz engines. That's like super cool, but did they just like flip and reverse the Mercedes logo? Okay, Shujin. Shujin Academy is interesting because Shujin is a homophone for the word prisoner in Japan. And that little double S squiggly, well, that's another police reference because it's, you know, it's like the sign thing that they use. Also, if you look, you'll notice that the badge is shaped like a police badge because police. And my guess about the chevrons that are on it is the sergeant rank for cops, since it has 3 chevrons. Sergeants are often put in control of geographic preaching positions, such as watch commander. Basically, they call the shots, which makes a lot of sense because you're in school and they call a lot of shots in school for you. Citroen, however, is merely a rank 3 police officer. Citroen's logo is inspired by the double herringbone shape of Polish Metal Gear systems from the early 20th century. And oh, well, there you have it. The school emblems are based on some things that are entirely unrelated, and the staff sometimes dispute the connection, like with Persona 3, where Soejima specifically says it wasn't intended. So, if you really think that this is the case, then what you're doing is you're calling Soejima a dumb little lying baby. You're saying that he's just a little liar, a Weasley little liar. The thing that's funny is Japanese fans clocked this similarity around the time that Persona 3 first released, and they only really saw that with the Persona 3 logo. And that's why Soejima had to even correct the record to begin with, specifically denying that it was inspired by the BMW logo, which means in order for you to believe this, you again would have to believe that this is something that Soejima would lie about, possibly so he wouldn't get sued. I think the earliest time that I could find anything about this mentioned in the West is in 2009, which is when this GameFAQs post was made. And well, I mean, it's just saying things like it's fact, but without actually doing anything. But you know, that's a typical SMT fan for you. I feel like this has so much similarity to the Nocturne Fierce Battle thing. First of all, Fierce Battle as a name just came from people making it up and no one doing any lick of research, even though both the Japanese name was published and available and the English name was published and available from jump. People still just made it up and did their own thing. That's very similar to this. Not only that, but the other part of the Fierce Battle, Force Battle thing is that people just made up that it said One More God Rejected. Again, later on the research would be available with the release of Strange Journey. That jumping off point was me finding the origin of the lyrics. People could have just read Strange Journey's liner notes, but instead they just decided, I like Force Battle, One More God Rejected, because it makes sense to the plot, in which there is no Yahweh and there's also no reason to reject God except if you talk about gods as reasons, but that's not how it works and the game doesn't make that a point of contention. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is when people feed you and prime you into thinking this way, that's called pareidolia, because then you see patterns in things. So when you prime someone to hear One More God Rejected, I'm above outside you, you start to see the pattern and then you hear it too. Someone gives you just enough information for you to fill in the gap that isn't actually there. The Megaten equivalence of finding Jesus on a piece of toast or on a potato chip. In the Force Battle video, people made comparisons to that blue dress or the Laurel and Yanny thing, but that's not really the case at all. Because like I was saying, it's just a bunch of pareidolia, a bunch of wanting to make these round shapes fit into a square hole. It's making a series of logical concessions to arrive at a desired conclusion, or accept the simplest explanation that is corroborated by the developers themselves. And just in case people keep bringing up this whole car connection, here's my rebuttal. What about the other school in Persona 2? The other school in Persona 4? Yusuke's school in Persona 5? The school in Trinity Soul? When you look at any of those, you can't really see no cars, can you? Well, I mean, when you squint, you can kind of see maybe Trinity Soul's logo looks like the Ferrari logo. The most memorable reply to my Force Battle video for me is actually someone who said something to the effect of, I understand that it's war broke out in heaven, but I will choose to say one more God rejected, because that is what makes me happy. In that regard, being right is what makes me happy, which is why I made this video. Goodbye, fellow megatennists. By the way, P.S., the worst thing about all this is we already have some blatant car theft. Melchizedek is the Mercedes-Benz demon. Maybe he's a new student at Yasogami High.